All right, everybody, welcome back to A Good Day to Roll Die as I continue towards my first mission of Star Trek Adventures Captain's Log. We've already created a character. I've already created a character, I guess, but you are with me, maybe one or two of you. So we have maybe Wally, Lagaki. Last time, we then fleshed out that character a little bit more. We found out that he was the first officer aboard a ship, the USS Terai. We discovered that he had a very unconventional career towards Starfleet. He didn't start out as a Starfleet officer, but he got a kind of an emergency commission during the Dominion War, and then he was promoted at the end there. And we're going to learn more today here. But basically, became one of the officers in charge of essentially refitting the USS Terai as it gets ready for its next journey. We also found out about the USS Terai, Miranda class vessel, very, very old, very stately ship that was pretty much destined for the scrapyard until the Dominion War hit, and then next thing you know, it had to be kind of pulled back into service and took its lumps during the war, and that's why it's going through this refit. And today we'll meet some more of the cast of characters. We did roll up the mission, which we have the mission type shown here. Right, we're going on a deep space exploration mission. There's some sort of intelligence leak. We're going to be exploring a living starship. There's going to be a total catastrophe, and there's some sort of ancient war machine attacking nearby planets. So, putting all that together, I wrote up a very brief synopsis of what this first mission is going to look like. And so it's going to be the USS Terai is ordered to investigate a series of Federation communication relays near the Romulan neutral zone. Starfleet's relationship with the Romulan Star Empire has already begun to cool at the end of the Dominion War, and some recent Romulan fleet movements along the border suggest a possible intelligence leak with regard to recent Federation activities. So there's concerns that maybe the Romulans are intercepting communications passing through these nearby relays. So the Terai is going to go check those out and make sure they're not compromised. While conducting the mission, the Terai encounters a damaged alien vessel. Soon after the crew begins exploring the vessel, the Terai receives a distress call from a nearby planet under attack by an unknown force. Is it possible these events are all coincidence, or are they somehow connected? So that's how we're going to tie everything in, and we'll see how it builds out from there. Before we get to that, though, I felt like there had to be some sort of prologue, maybe a little bit of a teaser that kind of set the stage for the first mission. Oh, and as you can see, the episode name is Living Nightmare. I felt that was very appropriate. We have a living ship, we have a catastrophe happening, we have an ancient war machine blowing things up. I felt that was pretty appropriate for the conditions here. So before we start that, I felt there had to be a bit of a prologue. So, first of all, what are we looking at setting wise? My thought is as to what is happening here and how where our characters are at when we start this first mission and start the voyage of the Terai. The year is 2376. It's about a year after the end of the Dominion War, and the Federation is kind of struggling to bring itself back to where it was before that war began. It's probably the most devastating war that they have possibly ever seen in the history of the Federation, but certainly the worst conflict that they've been engaged in since probably the Klingon Federation War in the 23rd century. So that's more than 100 years ago. They've lost like a third of their fleet in terms of starships. They've lost probably thousands, tens of thousands of experienced personnel, and over that 3-year time span in which they were engaged with the Dominion War, and even earlier when they got caught in the conflict with the Cardassians and the Klingons, plus the Borg incursions and everything else. A lot of your typical kind of exploratory diplomacy, flag waving missions, humanitarian missions that the Federation would engage in just didn't happen during the war. And so you had a lot of those ships pulled away from the border, from the frontier, from these far out places in the Federation. And now the Federation's trying to get back to that. And they're going to probably find that a little bit difficult because, number one, there's a lot of planets and colonies and people and civilizations that maybe have felt like they've been ignored or even abandoned by the Federation. So they might not have necessarily a warm welcome. And they've tried to kind of learn to survive a little bit on their own and grow more independent from the Federation. And then you have another set of individuals and groups that are also equally unhappy to see the Federation come back because they were probably exploiting the situation. Your pirates, your raiders, your extreme capitalists like the Ferengi that were more than happy to kind of fill the power vacuum with their own strength. And now they don't want to give that up, and the Federation's going to have to find a way to deal with that. On top of it, you have a lack of crew, a lack of ships, and that's where we kind of find ourselves. And that's where the Terai comes in. It's a ship that, by all means, probably would have been mothballed and stricken from the Starfleet Registry years ago. And now it's being put back into service with a set of crew from a wide variety of circumstances. Some, very fresh-faced cadets, people like Wall who come from a very unconventional background. And as we'll see here in a minute, our commander, who's fairly young and untested. And the Terai is just about to finish up its refit and leave space dock. And it's been assigned to a far-flung portion of Federation space, kind of along the border, kind of around, maybe exploring around the neutral zone on one side, and the other side kind of open, unexplored space. And it's an area that has too few Federation ships and probably one too many problems, and they have to find a way to deal with that. So we open up our cold open on episode 1. We see Wall standing on the deck of Hangar Bay 2 in the Terai. And if you think about the Miranda class, right, the aft section, there's 2 large hangar bays. They're even labeled Hangar Bay 1 and 2. So he's standing on Hangar Bay 2, and he's watching this runabout slowly make its arrival and landing on the deck. And he waits patiently for a few minutes while the pilot goes through his or her post-flight checks and inspection and embarkation process. And then the hatch opens on the runabout, and out comes, we see this young, fresh-faced officer. I like to think of him think of season 1 Riker, beardless Riker. He's a guy, again, Wall's probably in his early 40s. He's a lieutenant commander at this point. But this guy is probably his early to mid 30s. He's got the commander's pips. He's got 3 gold pips on there. He looks pretty confident, pretty raring to go here. And Wall identifies him right away. This is Commander Edward Ellis. He is the captain of the ship. Now, he's not captain in rank. He is a commander in rank, but he's everything that Riker was in those early seasons. He's that up and coming character. He's almost destined for the captain's chair and for great things, but hasn't really proved himself yet. And again, Starfleet's kind of stretched thin here, so they're going to take someone who has a lot of raw talent, but maybe not the experience, and they're putting him in the command seat for, let's face it, it's a second or third line ship in the Terai, because they need bodies and seats, and they can't commit a more experienced officer for this role. So Commander Ellis is it. So Commander Ellis approaches Wall. Wall stands at attention and says, "Well, welcome aboard to the Terai, Commander. Welcome aboard the Terai, Captain." And Ellis holds out his hand very warmly, greets Wall, but he does say, "Thank you for having me aboard, Commander. But I do want to note that I prefer Commander Ellis to Captain." Wall nods and says, "Understood, sir. But to be frank with you, knowing the crew that we have here, I would expect to hear quite a few captains for a little while." And Ellis kind of sighs in defeat at that, and says, "Well, I'll defer to your good judgment, Commander, and I will expect that. And I do want to thank you for staying on board through the rebuild and staying with the ship. I recognize that it's very difficult to replace that kind of experience that kind of personal experience to a starship. So thank you for staying on as my first officer. At this point, Ellis is already kind of walking out of the hangar bay. He's heading down the corridor. They're still talking, and Wall thanks him for that and says, "Well, really, the Commodore Stack was the brains behind the rebuild, and Lons was our heart. But I like to think I picked up a few things from them. Honestly, though, the ship, this wasn't so much a rebuild. It was really wasn't so much a refit. It was really a rebuild. The ship saw a fair amount of action during the war, and she took her bruises, and we had to patch her up." As well as saying this, he notes kind of a sudden change in Ellis's mood. And we're going to see, so this is where we're going to do kind of a practice roll here and see if Wall can kind of infer anything from what he just saw in Ellis. Okay. So I'm going to do a practice task roll. So that's why we have 2 dice today. We have the 2d20. So how a task roll works is we got to determine what we're rolling against. What is the task? I'm going to click over here and get rid of the mission log for a second, so we can go back to Wall's stats here. So what attribute are we rolling against? What discipline? We're going to add those 2 numbers together, and then we're going to decide. We're going to roll our 2 dice. If the numbers we roll, at least one of them, is equal to or less than our target number, we succeed. If they're both less, then we really succeed. If the numbers are all higher than our task roll, then we failed. And if you roll a 20, that is an epic failure, a critical failure, and something really bad happens. So this is going to be hopefully a straightforward one. Wall's just trying to kind of infer what he might be getting off of Ellis's mood here. So I think that's going to be an insight plus command roll to kind of get a sense of what's going on here. So we have our 2 dice, and we're going to roll them. And so our target number here is 11 for insight, 5 for command. That's going to be a 16. So let's go ahead and roll and see what we get. So we get a 6 and we get an 11. So not only do we succeed, but we really succeed. So let me double check here, but I think that makes us we would technically get a momentum for that. So yeah, if you succeed on both rolls, you can get a momentum, and you can bank momentum for later, or you can spend it right away. And again, this is the prologue. We're just playing for practice. So let's say, where did my dice go? Where did my dice go, everybody? Oh no, hang on a second. Where'd they go? Something happened with my dice. There they are. They're back. Okay. 6 and 11. So we've got 2 successes. We're getting momentum. We're just going to spend it right away. Spending the momentum gives you an extra advantage. You could roll for an advantage, but in this situation, we're just going to assume that, Wall's a very perceptive person. He's dealt with humans, aliens for a long time in terms of negotiating with them, dealing with very complex problems, right? He's pretty good about reading people, and he's also, he's done his homework on his commanding officer as well. He kind of knows what's going on with that. So he infers that Ellis is pretty uncomfortable with, very uncomfortable with discussions about the war, especially when you start talking about how the Terai kind of got beat up, and he knows that Ellis himself wasn't directly involved in the Dominion War. He was certainly in Starfleet, but he was serving at Utopia Planitia. He was in charge of one of the starship building programs. Take your pick for ship class. Let's just say the Sabres. He was overseeing the development and refit of the Sabre class to optimize it for Dominion fleet operations. But that meant he was not on the front lines. And this seems to bother him a little bit. And in fact, when Wall thinks about it, he's seen a lot of young officers before, right? He's served with them over the last couple of years. He served with them for decades, but especially in the Dominion War, he's seen a lot of them come and go. And he notes that for a lot of these young officers, he's kind of seen them suddenly grow old through their experiences in the war, and there's kind of a certain look that they take on, and maybe a color in their eyes, or a certain way that they carry themselves as they've had those experiences. And he doesn't seem to see this in Ellis. Ellis has not experienced that, and it seems to bother the commander quite a bit when the discussion of the war comes up in this case, and he really can't understand it, can't sympathize with it. So, with that in mind, Wall quickly kind of changes direction and says, "Well, I also want to thank you, sir, for bringing our last runabout aboard, so we can get ready to go. And I do apologize that you had to do it personally, but Lons assures me that the transporters will be fully functional and ready to go by the time the ship is ready to leave space dock." And Ellis kind of considers that and goes, "You're talking about our chief engineer, the Betazoid?" And he says, the way he says Betazoid is kind of like there's a Betazoid engineer. It's kind of, don't see that too often. And Wall responds, "Yeah, he's Lieutenant Roy is our chief engineer, and despite everything, he don't let the Betazoid part of it fool you. He's extremely capable engineer, and I would trust this ship with him more than anyone else. He's been with me the entire refit. He knows this thing like the back of his hand." And Ellis nods. He says, "Well, good. I'm looking forward to meeting him, and in fact, I want to meet the entire senior crew. So please get them assembled. Let's have a staff meeting in the conference room in 1 hour." And Wall says, "Yes, sir. We'll get that set up." And Ellis kind of nods. Heads off to the turbolift, probably heading off to the bridge, maybe finding his quarters, what have you. And he just says, good. I'm looking forward to working with you, Commander." And Wall says, "Likewise, Captain," as the doors close. So that'll be kind of end that scene. Next time we see him, hour later or so, we're in the conference room. Typical, imagine any of the conference rooms we've seen in any of the Star Trek series, right? You have one side, you have all these panoramic, picturesque, transparent aluminum windows overlooking deep space. In this case, the view is kind of obstructed by the framework, the structure of the space dock as the Terai is still sitting there. Then you have this kind of very professional looking, but not necessarily ornate table, long elongated table. The room is sparsely decorated. There's probably a view screen or two on either side. And then scattered around the tables, we have our senior staff. So at the head of the table, we have Ellis. To his right, we have Wall, and we kind of fill out the rest. There's Lance Roy, Lieutenant Lance Roy. He's our Betazoid chief of engineer. We have a Aurelian helmsman, Tekekchik. He's our ensign. The Aurelian's a bird-like species. There's a lot of diversity there. Tekekchik looks kind of like, reminds Wall of like an overgrown bluebird, the kind that he used to see on the University Plaza when he was studying on Earth. Next to him is the Chief of Security, Lieutenant Commander Jamara Roll. She is an Adosian, and typical of her species, she's got this silver, long platinum hair that kind of falls down. Very serious look to her. And Wall notes mentally in his mind that, she's probably one of the most experienced tactical officers that he's ever worked with. She was at the first Battle of Chintoka during the war. She was at the Battle of Cardassia. She's seen a lot of action, and she is more than prepared for whatever this ship is gonna run into. We have across from her, we have our operations officer, Karg, son of Dojmar. He is a lieutenant from the Klingon Defense Forces. He's wearing the typical Klingon Defense Force uniform. He is part of the newly revitalized officer exchange program. So once Chancellor Martok got into power, he quickly reinstated the officer exchange program, largely due to, well, not only Worf's influence, because Worf was a Starfleet officer and he's now the ambassador, but Martok obviously worked very closely with a lot of Starfleet officers during the war, and he saw the advantages to the kind of synergies that Klingon and Starfleet crew could have together. So Karg is one of those first officers to be deployed to Starfleet. Starfleet's more than happy to have additional experienced officers. So Karg has that typical serious Klingon face, mostly bald with kind of a exception of a short top knot coming off the back of his head there. And then we have our chief medical officer, which actually I don't have a name for her yet, but she is a Xindi primate. Walt doesn't know too much about her, other than to say that she came pretty well recommended. And all these officers have been on board the ship for a few days. Walt has met them, had exchanged some pleasantries with them for the most part. Ellis was really kind of the last one to be brought on board the ship. And Ellis is there speaking. He's kind of having this, first captain's speech, kind of this rah-rah speech. And what he's saying in this moment, I don't have it written out, and it's not exactly important, but the sentiment is things like, well, we're Starfleet. We're here to explore. We're here to keep the peace. We're here to provide, hope and positivity and sunshine and rainbows to the Federation. And it's time for us to get back to our roots and all these things that he's trying very hard to be what's the word I'm looking for, to raise, to boost morale and get people excited for this mission. But you can kind of tell in the moment that not everyone's really buying it. And Walt's kind of looking around the room and kind of see, especially in the looks of some of the more experienced officers, Jamara and Karg kind of share this moment, this look with each other halfway through the speech when he's discussing kind of he kind of touches on the war a little bit and how that's changed the Federation, but how we can, how the Federation can still persist and all this kind of stuff, right? Everyone's very polite about it, and Ellis makes sure that he insists that he is looking forward to working with everyone and how he's very proud to be a member of this very esteemed crew. But it's not quite sure if anyone's really buying into it. So he lets everyone know that the ship's going to be shoving off at 0900 hours the next morning, and he wants everyone to be ready. They're going to start their journey, and the Terai is going to be representing the best of the Federation, the best of the best. And you can almost kind of feel the figurative eye roll run through the meeting at this. But at that, he stands up, and everyone kind of follows suits, and he says, let's make this a journey for the history books, ladies and gentlemen. Dismissed. And everyone kind of just nods politely. And Ellis is one of the first to kind of leave. He turns to Walt and says, Commander Lakaki, I want to talk about some of the operational matters a little bit later. Can you meet me in my ready room in 30 minutes? And Lakaki acknowledges that. So Ellis is off doing whatever commander things he needs to do to get ready. And everyone else is kind of mulling around. And there's just kind of this kind of sense of ennui maybe with everyone. And after a few moments of silence, the chief medical officer, the Xindi, kind of looks at everyone and goes, so this is his first command, huh? And there's again this kind of silence, and Walt finally turns to the doctor and says, "Doctor, is that a medical diagnosis?" she kind of snaps out of it and goes, "No, sir." No. So Wall says, "Well, I suggest you keep it professional for now, Doctor. You're the commander. Everyone back to your posts." And everyone just kind of goes, "Yes, sir, yes, sir," and they begin to disperse, and Walls is kind of left there and kind of almost has a wry smile on his face, because he kind of feels the same way about that that speech, but he's ready to give the commander a chance here, and he walks off and gets ready for his meeting with Ellis himself. So that kind of, I think, wraps up. That would be, at this point, we kind of would fade out and go to our title screen and whatever that's going to look like, some rousing Star Trek music, and we would start our first mission. So I don't have that started yet. I still have to do a captain's log, initial entry for that. So we will start the first mission next time with our young captain, young commander, and with Wall, and we will begin exploring this living nightmare of a space mission. So hoping to see you and have you join me next time, and we'll see what the Terai and its crew can get itself into. So until then, I appreciate you joining me, and we'll see you out there. Bye.